Welcome to Anthropology. Today I want to take you through the story of Ehud, a story in the biblical Old Testament or the Torah about the first assassin or one of the first assassins in our ancient history. And before I read the passage to you, my name is Joshua Lamb. I am an artist, and welcome to my YouTube channel where I just talk about ancient history, mythology, and draw a fantasized version of it all. Today's art piece of Ehud is a comic page or a graphic novel page that I've been working on for almost a year, and not because of the difficulty of the page, but because of what I've been constructing to create a story that would lead on to so much more throughout the years to come that I've been really wanting to work on. I've been waiting probably my whole life to start this project, and it's been daunting to have this much fear of doing it correctly and really putting it out in the way that I see fit and really enjoy. I'm a big fan of history, archaeology, and anthropology, and I love to combine all those things to tell stories. And this one is going to be my very first one, hopefully be published within a year or so, and it really bring light to all the ideas that I have about these kind of characters in the Bible and other mythologies. And the Bible is a very interesting one because though it is a religious text and a compilation of various ideologies and theology, I'm bringing something hopefully new to the table and exploring something that most people may overlook when they're reading or interpreting the text. Now, if you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That'll definitely be really cool and help me out as an artist, and I appreciate you for doing it. But like I said, this is a piece I've been really struggling with to put out and work on, and the character's developing. And I'm going to explain that through this video as I draw it. Now I've been sketching, and you can see this is the pencil work that has kind of led up to it, all the details of the characters and the scene of these two boys wrestling and fighting in the square of Jericho. Ehud and his friend Goel. But let me read the passage of Ehud's story in the book of Judges, chapter 3, verses 12 through 30. The Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord strengthened King Eglon of Moab against Israel, because they had done what was evil in the sight of the Lord. In alliance with the Ammonites and the Amalekites, he went and defeated Israel, and they took possession of the city of palms. So the Israelites served King Eglon of Moab 18 years. But when the Israelites cried out to the Lord raised up them a deliverer, Ehud, son of Gera, the Benjaminite, a left-handed man. The Israelites sent tribute by him to King Eglon of Moab. Ehud made for himself a sword with two edges, a cubit in length, and he fastened it on his right thigh under his clothes. Then he presented the tribute to King Eglon of Moab. Now Eglon was a very fat man. When Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he sent the people who carried the tribute on their way. But he himself turned back at the sculptured stones near Gilgal and said, "I have a secret message for you, O king." So the king said, "Silence," and all his attendants went out from his presence. Ehud came to him while he was sitting alone in his cool roof chamber and said, "I have a message from God for you." So he rose from his seat. Then Ehud reached with his left hand and took the sword from his right thigh and thrust it into Eglon's belly. The hilt also went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, and he did not draw the sword out of his belly, and the dirt came out. Then Ehud went out of the vestibule and closed the doors of the roof chamber on him and locked them. After he had gone, the servants came. When they saw that the doors of the roof chamber were locked, they thought he must be relieving himself in the cool chamber. So they waited until they were embarrassed. When he still did not open the doors of the roof chamber, they took the key and opened them. There was the Lord lying dead on the floor. Ehud escaped while they delayed and passed beyond the sculptured stones and escaped to Syrah. When he arrived, he sounded the trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went down with him from the hill country. Having him at their head, he said to them, "Follow after me, for the Lord has given your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand." So they went down after him and seized the fords of the Jordan against the Moabites and allowed no one to cross over. At that time, they killed about 10,000 of the Moabites, all strong, able bodied men. No one escaped. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest 80 years. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. Ehud, being a left handed man, was something not normal and probably frowned upon in many ways. Now, not until much later in the history, you're going to find that left handed soldiers and warriors are very unique in their fighting. In fact, better because they can attack in different ways and become more precise and accurate fighters. And they are trained that way eventually. But the first off, we got Ehud using it, and it's not coming out that way. In fact, left handedness is more frowned upon, as most people would be using the right hand to eat and do other tasks, as you may see in cultures today. The left-handed person would have difficulty being accepted into culture. The ambidexterity of his warriorness comes in much later in his age and, of course, in the stories, as I mentioned before. This gives him that upper hand, pulling his blade and dagger from his right thigh compared to pulling from his left, as a right-handed man would. Now, for his 1 cubit, 18-inch long dagger, which is this blade that has been found in the Bronze and Iron Ages in the Levant by archaeologists, this thing would have been strapped in his inner thigh. But 18 inches is kind of long, and to pull that from your thigh efficiently, I have to make some assumption that Ehud is kind of a tall person or tall character. But for right now, as a kid, I'm just drawing him as a kid, and he's the one right there with his ponytail in place, and he is fighting his friend Goel. Now, my story starts with this obstreperous couple of boys, Goel and Ehud, fighting and brawling in the town square of Jericho, which Jericho was a very strategic location for the Jordan River crossings and the trade routes. It was also called the City of Palms, lots of palm trees, probably an open air kind of place. And it had tons of different people coming in and out of here, even the Egyptians, who still kind of controlled the area and people of that time during the late Bronze Age. So in my drawing, I'm kind of developing various types of people in different outfits with different type of head wraps and animals and trade. And you can kind of see that happening here with women and men of various types. Now, part of my story is going to be heavily placed on King Eglon of the Moabites as he comes into power, even in the late Bronze Age, with Egypt's power still affecting the Canaanites in politics and economy and all. He kind of comes in and takes rule and authority, and I want to show his rise because he's being blessed by the Israelite God, Yahweh, which I think a lot of people who read the Bible kind of overlook, especially the Christian community who don't see it through this historical and archaeological perspective, that Yahweh with the other gods of the Canaanite gods, Baal and Chemish and Asherah, were all served very cohesively and within this kind of culture. So there wasn't this super aggressive takedown of each other's gods, as there were statues and temples and different places being able to be served all at once. And you can kind of see that throughout the Bible, as you read it in the Old Testament, that these gods are served and they have idols in different ways. But the scripture being led by the Israelites, of course, would come into play, that pushing El and Yahweh much more and to be more dominant throughout time as it passes. Now, some scholars, like Michael Coogan, talk about Ehud being more of an oral tradition and lore tale, and then eventually becoming theological in its themes and placed into the Old Testament. But I like to think that these characters may have existed in the Canaanite and Israel uh, world, and just maybe been exaggerated to the point of fantasy, as we kind of do today with some of our heroes and people that we know and people of old. King Eglon is actually, the name means fattened calf, ready for slaughter, or just fattened calf. And this kind of plays into what Ehud's going to do later on when he stabs him in the gut, which actually he's stabbing him through the stomach, and he can't even pull his blade out of his stomach. That's how big this guy is. And instead of dirt coming out, it's actually poop. And, that kind of stuff. But they say dirt because I guess that's a very polite way of describing the color and consistency of what's coming out of the king. Now, the location of where Ehud assassinates King Eglon is actually considered to be the toilet. He gets him on the toilet, which is a pretty cruddy way to go. But I guess there has to be some humiliation involved in the storytelling, as Eglon kind of enslaved the Israelites for 18 years. So the Hebrew writers were obviously going to have some fun with this. But is to say, he was on the pooper when he got taken out. But as this is around 1200 BCE, the empires would eventually weaken and the trade networks would fail, and smaller tribal powers like Moab and early Israel would emerge. And Moab was just over across the sea at the Dead Sea. So it wasn't that far, but, far enough for them to have separation, but also close enough for them to come in and attack and have dominance over Israel and take over Jericho. The cool thing about the Moabites and Moab was their god was Chemosh. He was kind of known for child sacrifices and a few other things, but they had the blessing of the god Chemosh in the victory of wars. Archaeologists have even found that the Mesha stele, or stele, um, it talks about the story of the Moabites having the blessings by Chemosh to win in their wars. And this is really cool because this gives us a really close archaeological find to the book of Judges and all these other stories. Though it's not mentioned, we find that this king here had this war, and it kind of falls truth to the location and kind of culture. Okay, enough about kind of the history of Ehud and stuff. Let's talk about what I'm doing here. I'm inking in this page, and it's a wrestling match. They're fighting in the square. The people are gambling and trying to bet who's going to win over this other kid. But all in a ploy that these two boys are actually snatching purses and coins as they're in the fight, running into people, stealing fruit and stuff, all in the midst of this, vicious fight that they think is happening on coincidence, right? The townspeople here are selling stuff and buying stuff, and everybody's just kind of distracted at this while they are really doing an amazing job of stealing everyone's coin and purses and food and stuff. Now, the story of Ehud will start off with this kind of different perspective of this man who's been praised. He will have his rectitude, but my story is going to be a lot of more darker. I kind of find like I was trying to, portray it as maybe Game of Thrones meets the movie The Fountain. It has a lot of fantasy to it because I want to be introducing the gods and their interaction and perspective of helping out the humans and what their purpose is, because there's no real information on how their attitudes and their purpose for doing these things. It's always a human written perspective, and it's always like, oh, they blessed us with the war or something like that. But there's no reasons why, or there's no full fleshed out embodiment of these gods interacting with each other. And I really want to put that into the storyline and build it out. And that's why it took so long, because I had to study all these different gods that were in this time period, as well as the cultures who have given them power and given them life. Now, in the book of Judges and many of these stories in the old biblical text, there isn't really explained Ehud's death at all, and I get to play with his personality since it's not expanded on. It's just a few paragraphs, this story, but I get to kind of expand on his personality, his love interest, his goals, and why, he did what he did when he was chosen. Now, the really cool thing about this story, which I really liked, was it gives this perspective that a lot of people don't think about. And King Eglon invited him into his chambers in the end alone. And this kind of gives away this idea of a attraction, physical attraction from a man to a man, and having, wanting to do things. And I think a lot of people don't look at it this way because they're thinking, oh, religious text, it's very man, woman, it's very strict. But in old ancient cultures, I mean, even in the Bible, you can see that this was a huge practice and um, different parts of different cultures within the biblical text. So I want to expand on that. I want to kind of give some reach and some awareness to that, as well as representation for that for the people, and kind of tell a story that the gods weren't fully interested in your purity as much as they were interested in the acts that they were asking for and such. Because even Eglon was blessed by Yahweh, so what does that mean? Like, where does that go? And how does that affect the gods and the culture and the religions and the servitude and the sacrifices, right? What is really important? And I get to do that with this story, and it's a big task, and it's really fun to play with. So hopefully, I'll do it some justice. If not, I guess I'll hear about it. But I really enjoyed creating this story and having it kind of tell a narrative that I think is missed greatly in a lot of religious texts. Now, I'm not going to give away the full story. Bellows and everything goes. There's tons left for me to explain, but I'm just going to leave it up for you to read the book and the graphic novel. And this is one of the pages that I have been working on. And the book isn't going to be all comic book, even though it looks like a comic book. It's going to be mostly writing, and you're going to have every other page will have a drawing on it when I feel like it's necessary to show the character or an event, or I play it out. And the book will probably be in a few books. It'll probably be one or two books to separate the story of Eglon as well as Ehud's story and perspective. But I'll let you know when it gets to that point. I really find that drawing all these characters out was kind of healing for me because I needed to see where I wanted to take the culture and develop it. At first, I was very strict with the archaeology and really being very precise of what they should be wearing. But in reality, in the late Bronze Age, they were all just wearing tunics, and it wasn't very exotic. It was kind of boring to try to place this into a drawing. Everybody just looked the same at one point. Uh, so I decided I was going to go a little bit more on the fantasy side and kind of exaggerate some of the riches and the luxuries of the costume as well as the characters. Of course, I'm going to be doing my best to bring as much archaeological structure and evidence to the page, but I gotta have fun with creating something more fun to look at and exotic. So that's what I'm doing. And even though I've been kind of creating the Hood story very surreptitiously, I'm going to be posting more about it as my videos come out and hopefully more. I've been quite busy this last couple months and that's, my bad. But if you enjoyed this video and enjoy my art, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That'll definitely be very, cool. But also, if you have great information you want to share or ideas about biblical stories or mythology and Mesopotamia and other gods, definitely share it and comment and post. I'd love to hear about it. And yeah, this is my page, my first page of Ehud and Goel brawling in Jericho Square as the gods watch. Thank you for watching. It's been a minute since I posted, and I really appreciate you checking out my art and my drawing and storytelling and, these videos that I do. This one's really important. It took about a year to do, and there's a lot of reasons why. One, I recently had a newborn, but also within this year I've been developing the story of something so collective, not just Ehud in the Bible, but how to put together the entire realm of gods, from the Assyrians and the Akkadian gods, the Samaria, and all the original kind of developments of what we as humans have started with gods, and even till today, 5,000 to 6,000 years later, what we have with both Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism, and all the other religions that are developing and still keep on coming out. But this is a grand project I've been working on and really been struggling to get the proper historical and archaeological as well as the anthropological understanding of everything. And I don't know it all, and I probably won't ever know it all. But the attempt needed to be done, and I wanted to tackle this in my lifetime. And now that I am of age to feel confident in this, I'm going to be doing this from now on and just kind of creating all this. And if you've seen my other videos, I've told partial, small snippets of the other gods and what they're about. But I would like to collectively create something that is cohesive for all of them to be together and understood from a human perspective, but as well as the spiritual perspective. And
You know, I love this journey. I'm excited that you might want to join it with me. And if you have questions, please do ask. I love to explore and learn myself. But if you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my other videos, hit that notification button, all the good stuff. And remember that, you know, this is fun doing art. And if you're an artist, if you're creative, I would love for you to go create. In fact, you should create. So if you're creative, go create. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.